news. Now, we know the UK had the Brexit vote, and that was an advisory referendum, which meant that the people wanted to leave the EU. Now, nothing happened, and I've been saying this for a very long time, that nothing happened, and the central bankers are going to do whatever they have to keep the UK in the EU. And we know there was a ruling about the Parliament needs to vote on Article 50. And we're starting to see that British Prime Minister Theresa May, well, she might be facing a rebellion from within her own party, because it looks like she's wobbling back and forth on the Brexit strategy. And we can see right now that Nigel Farage is now predicting a Brexit betrayal, where he doesn't think that they're going to be leaving the EU because they won't invoke Article 50. And we can see at this point that we knew the central bankers most likely were going to do whatever they possibly can to keep countries in the central banking system. They don't want countries leaving the central banking system. That doesn't work for them. And always remember this. The central banks, they play dirty. They will cheat. They will lie. They will tell you whatever you want. But in the end, they will do whatever they have to keep countries in line, to keep their power, because they have no allegiance to any country, any group. They have allegiance to themselves. They don't care if they start wars. They don't care how many people die. They don't care about people. They're just in the way. They're just workers. When there's too many of them, they have to get rid of some of them to keep their system operational. If there's an uprising, they have to squash it. If people don't like it, they have to silence them. This is how the central banks work. And we can see right now that the central banks, they're in control of the system. They have been for quite a while. Our mission is to get them out. That is the mission. That should be the mission of every single person. Get the central bank away from our governments and remove those individuals who side with the central bank. Remove those individuals who don't work for we the people. And that should be here in the United States. It should be in Canada. It should be in the UK. It should be in Europe, Australia, and every other nation. We see Duterte right now. He's a little nervous. Why? Because he's saying that he might not be able to last his 6-year term. He's worried that he might be killed for unknown reasons. Well, we know the reasons. We know that the United States government central bankers, they're going to make their move and try to get rid of him, because he's not doing what they want. And again, when you don't do what the U.S. government central bankers want, they get rid of those people. They only want people who obey. Out in Libya, they see that Libya is descending into a free fall, and they're saying that the country's peace process is a complete mess. The unity government cannot take power, and there's major problems there. Translation: the unity government didn't work. The United States, the coalition forces, they're going to have to send troops into the country. This is what they're trying to say. Of course, they're going to tell us something completely different, but in the end, they will invade Libya. They are already using helicopters to hit specific targets, which is not the Islamic State. They're already bombing in there, which we knew this was going to happen. The next phase is to go into each and every one of these Middle Eastern countries with troops. And of course, what this is going to do, it's going to set off a world war. We see that the U.S. is bringing in 1,700 U.S. Army troops. And of course, they're only there in Iraq to advise and assist the local forces. And we see that they're going to be deploying soldiers from the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 82nd Airborne Division. And I think this is in North Carolina. And they're going to be bringing them over to Iraq. So what we're seeing is a build-up of troops in this area. Now, out in Syria, something odd has happened out there where a Turkish helicopter landed in the area near a checkpoint located at the near border of northern Idlib province. Now, the helicopter was carrying Turkish officers, and there were several boxes that were on the helicopter. Nobody knows what was in them. They're unknown at this point. They were also carrying advanced weapons, which were all unloaded. So most likely, as we can see right now, Turkey is continually bringing in weaponry. Whatever was in the boxes is being distributed out to the terrorist organizations. And we can see right now that they are planning something very big. Now, we know the United States government central bankers, they're going after Raqqa. Basically, they're going to have the Islamic State there morph into the moderate rebels and say, now we own Raqqa. Because remember, the Islamic State is in each one of these areas, and all the United States is doing is saying, okay, we're going to go after this. They know it's easy because they control the Islamic State. And all they do is they morph those terrorists into moderate rebels, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, and they say, look, we've beaten them, and they transport them to another location. Now, Russia is saying, we have this ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire today on November 4th. And right now, the moderate rebels, they're saying, well, we're not going along with this. We reject it. Well, of course they do. Because they don't want humanitarian aid coming in. They don't want anything like this whatsoever. We see the United States government, the central bankers, they're making their move into Raqqa. And we can see what they're doing right now. And this is part of their plan that we've been saying for a very long time. They're carving out this entire area. Remember, the United States has 2 air bases that they built in this Kurdish region. And they need Raqqa because Raqqa most likely is going to be the new capital for the moderate rebels. And we can see going down into Syria and into Iraq, they have built bases in the Kurdish regions of both Iraq and Syria, and it looks like they're getting prepared to carve this area out. Now, to take this entire area, to take not just Raqqa, but the entire area, the U.S. has built a force of 40,000 fighters in northern Syria, and they're ready to isolate Raqqa. So we can see right now that these forces are made up of moderate rebels, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, terrorist groups. And they're ready to fan them out into this area, take this entire area. What will be the response of Russia and Syria? Because you know, Russia and Syria considers al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, al-Sham terrorist groups. So once the United States is in this area with those terrorist groups, you know Russia and Syria are going to be moving in that direction. Now, I wanted to talk about the election PSYOP. We've been hearing about the election for quite a while. We know the establishment has their candidate that they want into power. And what I did was I broke this down into how they're creating this election PSYOP. The first thing we have is the propaganda that the economy is doing well. And when we look at it, they brought the stock market to all-time highs. This has been going on for quite a while. This is part of their illusion. Right before the election, they had GDP surge 2.9%, which everyone looks at and says, wow, the economy's back on track. Everything is going fine. And then today, of course, the unemployment rate came out at 4.9%. And that 4.9% number sounds really good, that the employment arena is back on track. Everyone is getting a job. And the U.S. government did a great job Obama did a great job. And this is what they've been doing. And the whole thing is an illusion. The whole thing is made up of manipulation. And then we move to the corporate media, the propaganda from the news. And they completely set this up to make us all believe that something might happen during the elections, because we can see what they've done. Now, number one, they created the propaganda that Russia cyber attacked the DNC and the election system. And we can see right now Obama has been out there and he's been saying that the elections cannot be manipulated. It's impossible. You must believe the U.S. government. They have the corporate media continually running that Russia was behind all of this. And we know this is not true. But they're having this broadcasted on corporate media. People are looking at it and they're saying, yes, it's Russia. They have the controlled corporate media rallying behind their candidate, saying that this is going to be the next president. They went as far to say that Trump voters are crazy, violent, deplorables. Now, this will be used later on. Just like the Russian cyber attack, this will be used later on in the PSYOP. But so far, we can see what they've done. Now, during the debates, it's very interesting how they pushed Trump to say, will you concede if you lose the election? They wanted him to say on air that he would do this. And he really didn't give an answer, but they were trying to push him on this issue because they wanted to use this later on. Because they're already setting it up that he was going to lose. And this way they can come back in time and say, look what you said. You said you would concede. Now, if we go back to the Russian cyber attack, where they were hitting the DNC and the election system, that Russia was helping WikiLeaks get all the emails and things like that, they've been pushing this quite hard, because most likely they might use this later on. And we know that they will use an event if it's not going their way. So right before the election, a couple of days before, we see already the corporate media is out there telling the country they are bracing for cyber attacks during the election. So we already see they have that covered. We also see that, which came out today, that, of course, this is right before the elections, and we knew there might be some type of an event. We don't know what the event's going to be, but they need something big to distract the people. They need to make it seem like, well, we need to postpone the elections if it's not going in the way they want, if they can't manipulate it the way they want. And we can see right now they have a warning out that Al-Qaeda is planning some type of terrorist attack in New York, Texas, Virginia, and other places. So they already put that out there. So we have the economy propaganda, we have the corporate news propaganda, and we can see already the PSYOP is underway. And then we have the manipulation. The election manipulation, the manipulation of the Supreme Court. And let's just go over this for a second. Remember, Joseph Scalia, he died. He was not replaced. Now we know he was not in favor of gun control. And we can see right now that by getting rid of him, which we all do believe that most likely he was murdered, it would open up that slot for a different Supreme Court judge. Now, there's a reason why I'm saying this. Because let's say they can't manipulate the election. Now, there are certain ways they can manipulate the election. We have people sending in their ballots very early. They want to get a handle on how the people are voting. We understand that people are actually opening up the mailed-in ballots and looking at them. And then we have from Bev Harris how they're able to manipulate the voting systems. And one way of doing it is fractionalizing the votes, where they create these fractions and they're able to push the percentage of votes one way or another. And I do have that video on the X22 report, or you can look it up on YouTube so you can see how it is explained. They had a programmer go into the election system, and they found out that the elections are done in decimals. And it allows them to skew the percentage of votes. But those people handling the elections, they don't see the decimals. It is hidden. Well, how can a vote be a fraction? It can't be. But they use this to manipulate the system. That's one way they can do it. And we can see that these systems are already pre-programmed. So it doesn't have to be cyber attacked. They don't have to really touch the machines. They're already pre-programmed with no matter what happens. No matter how people vote. So we can see right now they have many things in place. Now, I mentioned the Supreme Court before. Think about this for a second. If the manipulation makes it an even race to make everyone believe that this was a very close race, and maybe it's tied in some way, and people say, you know something, we have to have the Supreme Court make a decision. Well, yes, the Supreme Court can make a decision. I mean, we saw this back in the year 2000 between George Bush and Al Gore, and since 1789, there have been 57 presidential elections where the Supreme Court had to make a decision. So, let's think about this for a second. There's 8 judges right now. They got rid of Judge Scalia, and most likely the NSA, CIA, other agencies have already blackmailed the other judges. Because we know some of these judges said that putting a penalty on the Affordable Care Act was constitutional, when just a week prior he said it was unconstitutional. So we can see right now they already have that plan. Now what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that they plan for every circumstance. Now, are they perfect? Can they do this? Not really. We see other plans that have gone south. They haven't really worked out, but they're going to do whatever they have to. They play dirty. These are not nice people. So let's say the popular vote is in favor of Trump, and the Electoral College votes for Hillary. That might be a problem. People might question this. They might look further into the data. Maybe they'll have a cyber attack. Maybe they'll have Al-Qaeda have physical attacks where the president has to declare a state of emergency and shut things down. And most likely, what will he do? Postpone the elections. Now, let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say the Electoral College votes for Hillary and Trump got the popular vote. Well, they've already said that the people voting for Trump, they're violent. They had to show that in his rallies. We know this is not true. We know they're plants, but there are many people out there that don't know this. And they're going to go with this. And they might say, oh, look, people are destroying things. Of course, they're going to have agent provocateurs to do all of this. But again, what they can do is they can blast this all over the corporate media, distract everyone with this news of how Trump voters are destroying cities, destroying neighborhoods. And again, Hillary is the winner, but we have to declare state of emergency. Now, let's say Trump gets through all of this. Let's say he gets the popular vote. The Electoral College votes for him. You know, it's just a matter of time before he's persuaded, his family is threatened, and if he doesn't do what the shadow government, the deep state, wants, he will then be removed from the presidency. Now, if he is voted in, we know we have that time period from the time of the election until January, until he's sworn in. Maybe he won't make it to that point. And we can see if Hillary is elected where they manipulated enough to show that she has the popular vote, and she gets the electoral vote. They can also say that the Trump voters say that the elections are rigged, and they can still have a state of emergency declared. Now, let's say Hillary does get into office without any of this. It goes smoothly. She won. Trump says, okay, I'm out. No big deal. The voters don't do anything. And then we have the email scandal. Maybe she can squash it. Maybe not. But if the powers that are running the investigation go forth with the investigation and bring her up on charges, the shadow government really doesn't care, because the vice president will just take her place and they'll just keep doing what they're doing. Nothing will change. And we're already getting word from Julian Assange, who says that Trump won't be allowed to win because of the deep state, the shadow government. We see hacker Guccifer 2.0 warns that the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, are going to rig the elections. And of course they have the ability to do this because there's already software installed and they already have it pre-programmed. So we get a couple of confirmations that this is already in the works. And we can see how this whole thing is one giant manipulation to make us believe that the people are voting for the establishment. And this has been an ongoing push to keep the status quo, because this is what they want. They will do whatever they have to keep their power. They're just not going to let it go. And when you look at everything that has been done, you can see how they've been working on this for a very long time to create this PSYOP. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.